Welcome back to the community of independent thinkers. Today we are going to strip away the suffocating lies of the mainstream media to look directly at a naked, undeniable truth unfolding in the Middle East. What we are witnessing on this 17th day of the war between the United States, Israel, and Iran is not a campaign to restore global order. It is not a defense of the rules-based international system. What we are witnessing is the collapse of an arrogant delusion. We are watching a structural tragedy play out in real time, a disaster that the foreign policy establishment in Washington engineered with their own hands, and now they are being crushed by the ruthless weight of that very reality. The liberal elites and the newspapers you read every single morning are trying to shove a fairy tale down your throat. They are telling you that Washington is in control of this crisis. They tell you that President Donald Trump is successfully rallying the free world to secure the Strait of Hormuz, to protect international law, and to restore stability to the global economy. It is laughable. It is a strategic suicide wrapped in the hypocritical language of moral righteousness. The reality on the ground exposes a much darker, much more cynical picture. We are bogged down in a brutal war of attrition. And the most ruthless aspect of this entire debacle is that our adversary is using the very structure of the global economic system to strangle the West. Just look at this so-called coalition of ours. The foreign policy blob in Washington genuinely believed that they could just pick up the phone, invoke a few decades of providing security umbrellas, and our allies would obediently send their naval fleets to the Persian Gulf to act as meat shields. But what is actually happening? The United Kingdom is hedging and offering vague promises. The European Union flat out refuses to expand its naval operations. Australia and Japan have bluntly stated they are not sending a single warship. Why this sudden betrayal? Because in an anarchic world system, states do not act out of gratitude or a shared love for democratic values. They act out of a primal fear for their own survival. Australia and Japan understand perfectly well that the only true peer competitor they face, the only existential threat to their survival, is located in East Asia, not in the sands of the Middle East. Throwing their precious naval assets into a meat grinder in the Strait of Hormuz merely to underwrite Washington's strategic miscalculations is an act of political suicide. No rational leader in Tokyo or Canberra would ever agree to it. We arrogantly believed the entire world would bleed for our core interests. Now we are standing completely isolated in a sea filled with missiles and naval mines. And this brings us to the crux of the matter, the place where the ruthlessness of reality shatters every liberal theory. Look at the Strait of Hormuz. This is not just a regular waterway. This is the jugular vein of the global economy. 20% of the world's oil output flows through that narrow choke point. Our policymakers naively assumed that if we attacked Iran, they would be too terrified to close the strait because doing so would cut off their own economic lifeline. Naive, profoundly naive. Iran does not need to confront the United States Navy ship for ship in a conventional blue water battle. They only need to employ asymmetric warfare, and they have done exactly that. 700 missiles have been fired. 3,600 drones have been launched. At least 20 merchant vessels have been attacked in the region. What is the result? Maritime traffic has essentially evaporated. The Strait of Hormuz is, for all practical purposes, closed to the United States and its allies. But here is the geopolitical rub. Here is the ultimate strategic humiliation. The strait is not closed to everyone. Tehran is executing a campaign of coercive diplomacy that is breathtakingly cold and remarkably effective. They are still exporting millions of barrels of oil every single day. The deepwater berths at Karg Island are still pumping that black blood into massive supertankers. They are allowing Chinese and Indian vessels to pass through completely unharmed. Furthermore, they are actively negotiating to trade this oil using the Chinese yuan, directly driving a stake into the heart of the United States dollar's global hegemony. This is not an accident. This is the calculated weaponization of economic interdependence. Iran is turning the Strait of Hormuz into a geopolitical toll booth. They are deciding who gets to keep their economy running and who gets to suffer through crippling stagflation. They are sending a crystal clear message to Asia. They are saying, stay out of this American war, pay us in your own currency, and we will keep your economic engine running. The neoconservative hawks in Washington are screaming for blood. They are demanding that the United States military flatten Iran's oil infrastructure on Karg Island. The American president has explicitly threatened that he will reconsider the decision not to target those facilities. The United States ambassador to the United Nations stated that the president is not going to take any options off the table, yet 17 days into this conflict, those massive storage tanks on Karg Island remain completely intact. Why? It is certainly not out of humanitarian mercy, it is out of sheer terror. Washington knows exactly what happens if American bombs start falling on Karg Island. Iran will have absolutely nothing left to lose. They will mine the entire strait. They will unleash their coastal artillery. The price of oil will instantly skyrocket to unimaginable levels, crushing the global economy, causing European governments to collapse under the weight of angry voters, and guaranteeing an electoral slaughter for the incumbent administration in the United States. The hands of the American elite are tied tightly by the very globalized economic web they spent decades championing. They dare not pull the trigger on Karg Island because the bullet will ricochet and lodge itself directly in the skull of the Western economy. We have to step back and look at the ghost of history repeating itself. The decision to sink into this quagmire is the inevitable result of a path-dependent chain of strategic blunders stretching back decades. Ever since the Carter Doctrine in 1980, the United States has taken upon itself the absurd burden of using military force to control the Persian Gulf. We marched into Iraq, turned a functioning state into a pile of rubble, and created a massive power vacuum that Iran gladly stepped in to fill. Today we are repeating that exact same tragic mistake dragged into a relentless conflict by our ally Israel. The Israeli defense minister has announced a ground maneuver to remove threats in Lebanon. Hundreds of thousands of people are fleeing that expansion of limited ground operations. The United States and Israel may share a common adversary, but our strategic imperatives are entirely misaligned. This blind tethering is draining America's military and political lifeblood. Over 2,200 people are dead across the region. 200 American troops have been wounded in 7 countries. 13 American service members have been killed in action to date. American blood is being spilled on foreign soil that offers absolutely zero core survival value to the American homeland. And while we are burning our wealth, burning our artillery shells, and burning human lives in the Middle East, guess who is watching this entire spectacle from afar with a satisfied smile? Beijing. China is the only peer competitor on the planet capable of threatening American hegemony, and they are receiving a masterclass in American strategic incompetence. They see a United States that is deeply distracted, rapidly depleting its military stockpiles, and fundamentally isolated even from its closest treaty allies. They see the economic weapons of the West being neutralized as Iran successfully pivots to the East. Every single day that the United States remains trapped in this Middle Eastern war is a day that China is granted a free hand to consolidate its military power and economic influence in the Indo-Pacific. We are handing the ultimate strategic advantage to our greatest adversary on a silver platter. Administration officials are standing at podiums telling the public that this conflict will come to an end within weeks or sooner. The president says it will be wrapped up soon. It is just another sweet lie designed to pacify the masses. When you inject military force into a region with such a fragile and volatile geopolitical structure, there are no easy off-ramps. Iran has been preparing for this war of attrition for a very long time. They possess immense strategic depth. They possess formidable domestic missile production capabilities. And most importantly, they hold the ultimate economic lever known as oil. The Iranian foreign minister explicitly stated they are not seeking a ceasefire and are prepared to continue the war for as long and as far as necessary. This conflict is not going to end with a beautifully choreographed peace treaty signed on a red carpet. It is going to be a bleeding ulcer. It will relentlessly erode American structural power. It will strangle the economies of our allies, and it will radically accelerate the disintegration of the very global order that the West mistakenly believes it still controls. We have lied to ourselves for far too long, and now the butcher's bill has arrived on the table. Thank you for listening. If you want to continue walking with me to expose these harsh geopolitical realities, subscribe to the channel and join our community. In an era where the truth is systematically buried beneath a mountain of hypocritical propaganda, we need each other to keep our thinking sharp and rooted in reality. Stay safe, stay awake, and never stop questioning the official narrative. The truth is still out there. I will see you next time.